Have you ever been caught in a heated argument with someone who insists they're just passionate, but deep down, you know it feels more like a fight? That's because sometimes what we call passion can be masked as something much more intense. And today, we're talking about one zodiac sign that is masterful at this, Aries. If you've ever wondered why Aries seems to start fights and then claim it's all out of passion, you're not alone. The truth behind this behavior is deeper than you think, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why they do it and how you can handle it, or maybe even learn how to channel that fiery energy in a more peaceful direction. Hi, I'm Mind, and welcome to Zen Mind Peaceful Life, where we explore astrology and mindfulness to help you live a more balanced and fulfilled life. If you're someone who loves to understand the deeper aspects of your zodiac sign, or those around you, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Like this video, and share it with friends who could use a little clarity on Aries. I promise, by the end of this video, you'll see Aries in a completely new light. Now, let's dive into why Aries starts conflicts, and why they often call it passion. Trust me, this is going to be a ride you don't want to miss. When you think of an Aries, the first thing that probably comes to mind is their fiery, unstoppable energy. But did you know that this same energy, which fuels their ambition and drive, can also ignite an unexpected conflict? It's like Aries walks into a room, and suddenly, everything is a battle waiting to happen, whether they realize it or not. They are ruled by Mars, the planet of war and action, and that energy manifests in almost every aspect of their life. But here's the catch, they often confuse aggression with passion. It's not that they want to fight, it's that for Aries, conflict is just another way to feel alive, to express the intensity they carry within them. Think about that friend who is always charging headfirst into challenges. They don't ease into situations, they dive in. And when things don't go their way, that fiery nature can quickly transform into an argument. It's not personal. It's not even necessarily about the issue at hand. It's just that Aries needs to feel the heat, the rush of adrenaline that comes with confrontation. If they don't, they feel like they're not truly living. So, the next time you find yourself in a heated discussion with an Aries, remember, they're not picking a fight for the sake of fighting, they're expressing their passion. And it's up to you to recognize the difference. In relationships, this can be especially challenging. An Aries might argue with their partner, not because they're angry but because they're deeply invested. The argument itself becomes a form of expression, a way to show that they care. But this doesn't always translate well. In fact, it can lead to misunderstandings if their partner doesn't understand that passion isn't always about conflict, it's just the way Aries communicates. If you're in a relationship with an Aries, here's a quick tip, take a moment before reacting. Aries might get loud, but they're not always trying to hurt you. Recognizing this distinction can help you navigate heated moments with more compassion and understanding. But there's more to it than just emotional intensity. Aries' drive often comes with a sense of impatience, a desire for immediate results. They don't want to wait for things to unfold naturally. They need things now. And when things don't happen as quickly as they want, that impatience can quickly transform into frustration, and, you guessed it, an argument. It's almost as if they're fighting against time itself. This impatience is one of the reasons they often act before thinking, diving into conflicts without realizing the long-term consequences. If you find yourself with an Aries who's acting impulsively, remind them of the value of patience. Sometimes, taking a step back and breathing can turn a fiery confrontation into a productive conversation. But this takes practice, especially for someone like Aries, whose instinct is to act, not reflect. A perfect example of this might be a time you found yourself in a heated debate with an Aries over something small, something that, in hindsight, wasn't even that important. They were adamant about being right, pushing forward, and not backing down. And as the conversation escalated, you might have noticed that the issue didn't matter as much as how they felt about being challenged. To an Aries, being right is often equated with being powerful, being heard, and most importantly, being in control. It's not about the topic at hand, it's about their identity. When they feel threatened or questioned, they go into fight mode just to protect their sense of self. This behavior can be perplexing for those who don't understand the depth of Aries' need for autonomy. It's as if their very existence is tied to their ability to assert themselves in every situation. But here's the thing: if you can offer them space to express themselves and affirm their perspectives, without escalating the situation, they might just surprise you with how quickly they cool down. Acknowledge their emotions without feeling the need to fix the situation immediately. Aries doesn't always need a solution. Sometimes, they just need to be heard, to know that their passion and drive are appreciated. And then there's the competitive streak that runs deep within every Aries. They are born competitors, and every disagreement feels like a challenge to win, even if they don't consciously realize it. Their need to prove themselves can transform every argument into a battle they need to win, even if the stakes are low. Think about it: when an Aries gets into a disagreement, it's not about whether they should win. It's about the thrill of the challenge. This can make arguments with Aries particularly intense, because they'll push and push to ensure they come out on top. It's not personal, it's simply how they function. For those around an Aries, dealing with their competitive nature can feel draining. But there's a way to handle it. The key is to keep things playful rather than combative. Engage with their competitive spirit in a way that channels their energy in a more positive direction. Instead of letting the argument become a fight to win, turn it into a chance to collaborate and explore each other's ideas. When you do this, Aries might not even realize that they're softening their approach, because they're still in the game, still challenged, but now in a way that feels more constructive. It's a win-win. You might be wondering, how can you keep up with all this intensity, especially if you're not naturally fiery like an Aries? Well, the truth is, understanding Aries' passion is the first step. The next time you find yourself in the middle of one of their passionate outbursts, instead of pushing back, try leaning in. Take a breath, reflect on where the Aries in your life is coming from, and offer them the space to express their energy in a way that feels safe and constructive. This might be the key to turning a potential fight into a moment of deeper connection and understanding. But there's one more thing I want to leave you with: the way Aries channels their passion ultimately shapes the kind of life they lead. Their impulsiveness, drive, and need to act quickly may seem like an obstacle to peace. But when Aries learns to recognize their own emotional triggers, they can transform that same fiery energy into a force for good. It's about self-awareness, learning to pause before reacting. And most importantly, understanding that passion can be a tool for growth, not just for conflict. So, the next time an Aries comes at you with full force, take a step back and understand this: it's not a fight they're looking for, it's a chance to express their vibrant energy. And if you can tap into that understanding, you'll be able to navigate their world with a little more peace and a lot more insight. Aries' fiery nature isn't always about explosiveness or fighting. Sometimes, it's about their deep inner drive to move forward in life. But this drive isn't always in sync with the pace of the world around them. They can get restless if things aren't moving as quickly as they want. This impatience doesn't just apply to tasks or projects, it affects relationships too. Think about it: have you ever had an Aries in your life who couldn't stand sitting still? Always pushing to do more, be more, achieve more? While this can be incredibly motivating, it can also lead to tension. When Aries doesn't get the instant results they crave, that frustration boils over into what looks like an argument. They don't always have the patience to wait for things to unfold. And when their world doesn't speed up on command, the passion they feel can quickly turn into irritation. But here's where the key lies: Aries doesn't always need to be fixed or told to slow down. Sometimes, they just need someone who understands their need for quick action and offers support without judgment. For instance, when an Aries gets frustrated because a project isn't progressing at the pace they want, they're not necessarily looking for solutions. Instead, they want someone to listen, acknowledge their feelings, and remind them that things take time. By offering patience in those moments, You'll help them channel that restless energy into something productive instead of letting it spiral into conflict. And the beauty of it is, when Aries feels heard, their fiery nature becomes less about confrontation and more about achieving something together. There's something to be said about the way Aries carries themselves in any situation. Their confidence is undeniable, but sometimes it straddles the line between self-assurance and arrogance. At its core, Aries believes they have the answers. They trust their instincts, often to the point where they don't feel the need to consult others or seek out different perspectives. But when their confidence is misunderstood or challenged, that line between confidence and arrogance can lead to unnecessary tension. Aries doesn't back down easily, especially when they feel they are right. This can be difficult, especially for those around them who might feel shut out or dismissed. But here's a tip: if you're dealing with an Aries who is getting too wrapped up in their own confidence, try to engage with them in a way that acknowledges their strengths while still providing space for other viewpoints. Instead of clashing head-on, approach the conversation with a sense of curiosity, ask them to share more of their reasoning behind their decisions, and give them the chance to lead the conversation. When they feel respected and not threatened, Aries will often soften and listen. But this requires patience and a willingness to navigate through their intense self-assuredness with grace, rather than trying to push back against it directly. But Aries' need for control goes beyond their sense of self. It's embedded in how they approach every situation in life. Their assertiveness is often a reflection of a deeper need to be in charge. They don't just want to lead, they need to lead. For them, relinquishing control feels like a loss of identity. And if Aries feels as though they are not in charge, their instinct is to seize control by any means necessary. This can sometimes lead to conflicts, especially in relationships or situations where compromise is necessary. For Aries, it's a fine line between expressing themselves and dominating the situation. If you're dealing with an Aries who is constantly asserting control, it's important to understand that this need doesn't come from a desire to dominate, it comes from a fear of losing themselves. They want to stay true to who they are, which often means they want to steer the ship, even when that's not always possible or necessary. A helpful approach here is to offer them opportunities to lead in smaller, more controlled environments, where they can feel empowered without causing friction. Whether it's in a project at work or within a group setting, Aries thrives when they feel they have control over their environment. Instead of resisting their need for power, you might find ways to integrate their leadership qualities into situations where they can feel both needed and respected, without clashing with others. The competitive spirit in Aries is something that everyone who knows them must contend with. Aries is, at heart, a competitor. But their competitiveness isn't always about rivalry, it's more about testing themselves, proving their capabilities, and constantly pushing the boundaries of what they can achieve. This means that Aries doesn't shy away from arguments or debates because they're afraid to lose, they embrace them as challenges to overcome. It's as though they have to prove themselves in every situation, whether it's a big decision or a small conversation. This drive to compete can manifest in relationships too. Aries might argue for the sake of winning, not because they don't care, but because to them, the disagreement is an opportunity to affirm their strength, intelligence, and independence. Their need to win isn't personal, it's a reflection of their inner desire to be seen as capable and strong. So, what can you do if you're in a situation with an Aries where the competition is starting to feel a little too much? The trick is to turn the conversation from a battle into a collaborative effort. Instead of focusing on winning, suggest ways to explore the issue together. Ask Aries what their ideal solution would be, and gently guide them into seeing that it's okay to come to an agreement without having to win. When Aries feels they've had the chance to lead the conversation, they often become more open to compromise. One of the things Aries sometimes struggles with is recognizing that they don't always need to be in the spotlight. Aries is passionate about life, yes, but they also need to learn that passion can take different forms. Sometimes, their drive to be seen and heard can lead them to engage in conflict, even when it's unnecessary. This is where it's important to recognize that Aries doesn't need constant validation. But they do need recognition for their individuality and their passion. If you're dealing with an Aries who constantly craves the spotlight, it's helpful to acknowledge their efforts without giving in to their need to always be the center of attention. Recognizing their achievements without inflating their ego can help Aries find balance. Encourage them to explore their passions without always needing to perform for others. Giving Aries the space to be themselves, without the pressure of always proving something, can lead to a more harmonious and authentic connection. Instead of feeding into the need for constant recognition, create environments where Aries can feel truly seen for who they are. Not just for what they can do or how loud they can be. As much as Aries thrives on action, they also thrive on learning. They might start fights and claim they're passionate, but deep down, it's about growth. Every argument, every challenge they face, is a way for them to learn something new about themselves. When Aries starts a fight, it's not just about the other person, it's a way to explore their limits, test their boundaries, and discover more about who they are. Understanding this can give you a new perspective on Aries' behavior, helping you approach their energy with empathy rather than frustration. In the end, Aries is not out to start trouble for the sake of it. They are simply wired to feel deeply, to act fiercely, and to never settle for anything less than their best. When you understand this, dealing with their fiery nature becomes less about managing conflict and more about finding ways to channel their passion into positive action. Whether it's in a relationship, a workplace, or with friends, the key is to appreciate their intensity while gently guiding them toward more mindful expressions of their powerful energy. There's something about Aries that often seems like they're always in motion. Whether it's starting a new project, planning a trip, or getting into an argument, there's rarely a dull moment when Aries is around. And while this high-energy personality can be contagious and exciting, it can also lead to challenges, particularly when their need to always be moving forward clashes with the world's pace. For Aries, impatience isn't just a personality trait, it's a way of life. They don't have time to waste, they want things to happen now, and when they don't, their fiery frustration can quickly bubble over into conflict. It's almost as if they're in a constant race against time. Think of an Aries at a family dinner or group gathering. They're the ones jumping from topic to topic, always striving for the next exciting adventure or new idea. But when they don't get the reaction they're hoping for, or when someone isn't moving as fast as they'd like, their frustration becomes palpable. In that moment, Aries may not even realize it, but what they see as passion is often misdirected impatience. If you've ever felt your own energy sink when interacting with an Aries who's trying to move the conversation along too quickly or take the lead without waiting for input, you're not alone. This impatience can be draining for the people around them, especially when it starts to feel like they're more interested in getting their way than actually considering others' needs or opinions. So how can you handle this without feeling overwhelmed by their urgency? The trick is to ground the conversation. When an Aries begins to show signs of impatience, try to gently slow things down. Instead of directly confronting their frustration, offer a space for them to pause and reflect. This doesn't mean dismissing their ideas or halting their energy, it's about giving them permission to take a breath. When they can express their thoughts without feeling rushed, their natural enthusiasm will be able to shine, and you might even find that they are more willing to listen and collaborate. This drive for immediate results also ties deeply into Aries' competitive spirit. An Aries isn't just competitive for the sake of competition, they thrive on it because it fuels their desire to prove themselves. Not just to others, but also to themselves. When you put an Aries in a situation where there's a challenge, they'll push themselves harder, sometimes to the point of exhaustion, just to show they can rise to the occasion. This constant need to measure up can turn even the most mundane situations into a battle for dominance. Whether it's a friendly conversation or a professional situation, Aries is always mentally calculating, how can I win this? This competitiveness can show up in both healthy and unhealthy ways. For example, at work, and Aries may push themselves and their colleagues to achieve a goal, sparking a sense of accomplishment. But when the competitive drive turns inward and leads to constant self-comparison, things can get complicated. The Aries might start feeling like they're never enough unless they outperform everyone around them. This can lead to burnout, frustration, and unnecessary conflicts, particularly when they feel like they're not getting the recognition they believe they deserve. A piece of advice for anyone interacting with an Aries in this competitive context is to celebrate their wins while also encouraging them to slow down. Let them know that their value isn't just in their achievements, but in their ability to reflect and grow from each experience. Acknowledge their competitive drive, but gently remind them that competition can be just as much about self-improvement as it is about winning. This helps Aries to realize that it's okay to let their guard down and stop seeing every interaction as a race they need to win. At the heart of Aries' personality is a strong sense of self. Their identity is their fortress, and they'll do whatever it takes to protect it. This strong self-assurance often manifests as arrogance to those who may not understand it. Aries doesn't question their worth, they know it intrinsically. And while that confidence is admirable in many ways, it can also make them come off as dismissive, especially when they feel like their sense of self is being challenged. In an argument, they might react defensively, thinking they need to protect their personal truth. This can lead to moments of intense conflict where neither side is truly listening, because Aries is too focused on defending their own identity. The key to understanding Aries here is to realize that their confidence is not just about being right, it's about their desire to maintain control over their narrative. This desire for control can be seen in everything they do, whether they're pushing through a project or arguing a point. They need to feel like the master of their fate. For people around Aries, especially in relationships, recognizing that their defensiveness isn't about rejecting others' perspectives but about safeguarding their personal identity is important. When you approach them with empathy and understanding, you create a safe space for them to open up without feeling like they have to prove themselves constantly. It's also essential to recognize that Aries' need for control often stems from an underlying fear of vulnerability. If you've ever been in a situation where an Aries seemed to fight tooth and nail over something seemingly trivial, it's because they fear losing their sense of self-worth. For Aries, letting go of control is like relinquishing a part of their identity. This fear of vulnerability can also show up in relationships, where Aries might resist compromise or collaboration because it feels like a loss of their independence. However, the best way to handle this dynamic is to create situations where Aries can feel both powerful and supported. Give them opportunities to take charge in smaller matters, like planning a day out or leading a project, but also gently introduce moments where they can learn to trust others' input without feeling like they're losing themselves. By validating their ability to lead, while also showing them the strength in collaboration, you can help Aries find balance between independence and vulnerability. Another significant trait of Aries is that they are incredibly direct, almost to a fault. Aries has no filter. When something's on their mind, they'll say it, regardless of how it might come across. This unfiltered nature can be refreshing, but it can also be blunt, sometimes crossing into territory that feels abrasive or rude. When an Aries gets passionate about something, they don't have the patience for subtlety. But this directness can often be misunderstood, especially in sensitive situations where diplomacy is needed. If you've ever found yourself in a conversation with an Aries where their bluntness felt like an attack, it's because they truly don't see the need to sugarcoat anything. For them, the truth is paramount, and anything less feels like dishonesty. While their directness can be jarring, it's important to remember that it comes from a place of integrity. Aries values honesty above all, and they believe that telling it like it is will cut through the clutter and get to the heart of the matter. However, this approach doesn't always work for everyone, especially if you're someone who values tact and nuance. The key here is to let Aries speak their truth, but to also help them understand the importance of delivery. If you find yourself in a situation where Aries' bluntness feels like it's pushing your boundaries, it's okay to call them out gently. Let them know that while you appreciate their honesty, you also need a bit of space to process things without feeling attacked. Lastly, Aries' rebellious streak is a force to be reckoned with. There's an inherent desire in every Aries to push back against the status quo, to challenge systems and structures that feel restrictive. This rebellious energy can often manifest in small, everyday defiance or in more significant acts of breaking from tradition. For Aries, it's about creating their own path, forging ahead without the limitations that society or others try to impose on them. This can lead to incredible breakthroughs. After all, it's often the rebels who change the world. But it can also create friction in situations where Aries' rebellious nature doesn't align with the expectations of others. If you're dealing with an Aries who seems to be always questioning authority or challenging conventions, recognize that their rebellion isn't necessarily about disrespect, it's about their innate desire for freedom. Encouraging Aries to channel this rebellious energy into causes they're passionate about can help them feel empowered, while also teaching them the value of respecting boundaries and working within certain systems. By guiding them toward constructive rebellion, you help Aries use their energy in ways that create positive change rather than unnecessary conflict. As we've seen, Aries' natural drive can sometimes create tension, especially when that drive turns into impatience or aggression. But there's one more side to their passionate nature that's important to recognize: their desire for self-discovery through conflict. Aries has an insatiable need to understand themselves and the world around them, and they often do so by testing their limits through intense emotional experiences. This might look like starting a fight over something small. But the truth is, Aries isn't just fighting for the sake of it, they're trying to figure out who they are in the process. If you've ever had an argument with an Aries that seemed to escalate out of nowhere, you've probably experienced this firsthand. They're not necessarily arguing to be right or to win, they're searching for clarity in the midst of chaos. The fight itself is a mirror, reflecting their inner turmoil and questioning. It's their way of peeling back the layers of their own identity, testing their boundaries, and pushing for personal growth. This constant need for self-discovery can often feel exhausting to those around them, especially if you're caught in the crossfire. But understanding this internal struggle is the first step in navigating an Aries' volatile emotions. So, what can you do if you're the one on the receiving end of an Aries' outbursts? The best approach is to offer them a moment of reflection, rather than adding fuel to the fire. Aries thrives in an environment where they can express themselves freely and without judgment. Instead of reacting with equal intensity, try to stay calm and create space for them to explore their feelings. Ask open-ended questions that help them articulate what's truly bothering them. This approach not only allows Aries to better understand themselves, but it also allows you to connect with them on a deeper level, moving beyond the surface-level conflict. Now, this brings us to one of the most interesting things about Aries: their ability to rebound after a fight or emotional upheaval. Unlike other signs, who may brood or hold on to grudges, Aries is incredibly resilient. They might explode with passion, but they don't hold on to anger for long. This is because, for Aries, emotional outbursts are often short-lived, a way of releasing pent-up energy before moving on to the next challenge. After a fight, Aries will often come out the other side feeling stronger, more confident, and ready to take on the next adventure. This rapid recovery can be both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it means that Aries doesn't linger in negative emotions for too long, allowing them to quickly move forward. But on the other hand, their tendency to rebound quickly can sometimes create frustration for those around them, especially if they don't give others the space to process the situation. If you're close to an Aries, and you find yourself in the aftermath of a conflict, it's important to recognize that they might already be moving on. But that doesn't mean everyone else is ready to do the same. So, how can you work with Aries' quick recovery and help smooth things over after a heated moment? The key is patience. Aries may want to move on fast, but that doesn't mean you should ignore the aftermath. Take the time to communicate openly and make sure everyone involved has had the chance to share their feelings. This will not only allow Aries to understand how their behavior affects others, but it will also help you build a deeper bond based on mutual respect and emotional intelligence. Remember, Aries may rebound quickly, but it's essential to have those important conversations to ensure that the cycle of conflict doesn't repeat itself. Finally, we come to a central truth about Aries that might surprise you, despite all the fiery passion. Their constant need for action, and their sometimes brash demeanor, Aries deeply craves connection. It's easy to get caught up in the intensity of their energy and assume that they don't need anyone or anything beyond their own drive. But at the core, Aries is searching for genuine connection, whether it's in a friendship, a relationship, or a creative endeavor. They may seem independent, sometimes even aloof. But they crave people who understand them and support their journey. The challenge with Aries is that their passion for independence can make it difficult for them to ask for help or to acknowledge when they need support. They might push others away in an attempt to maintain control, but the reality is, they are seeking that connection all along. If you're in a relationship or friendship with an Aries, understanding their deep need for connection will help you navigate their sometimes contradictory behavior. While they may seem to go through periods of emotional distance, they're not necessarily rejecting you, they're simply figuring things out on their own terms. If you want to support Aries in a way that fosters a deeper connection, it's essential to give them the space they need to explore their own passions and ideas while also offering a foundation of emotional support. Encourage their pursuits, but let them know that you're there for them, no matter what. Aries may not always express it directly, but knowing they have a reliable support system in place will help them feel safe enough to open up and allow that connection to grow. As we wrap up today's video, I hope you now have a deeper understanding of why Aries acts the way they do. Their passion, impatience, and fiery nature aren't just about conflict or chaos, they are all part of a deeper journey of self-discovery, growth, and the drive to connect with the world around them. Whether you're an Aries yourself or you know someone who is, remember that behind every argument, every moment of passion, is a desire to be understood, loved, and appreciated for who they truly are. If you've enjoyed diving deep into the world of Aries with me today, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up, and share it with anyone who could benefit from a little more insight into the fiery, passionate world of Aries. And don't forget to leave a comment below, whether you're an Aries or just someone who loves learning about astrology. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring the stars and how they shape our lives.